Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm here to do a pre-drywall presentation with you, but I wanted to start with the exterior first. The first thing I want to discuss is the blue board that's on the exterior of the home. So it's made by Dow. It's Super Tough R is the name. It actually has two purposes. The first purpose is to keep water from protruding into the home, penetrating into the home. So if you see here, we tape all the exterior penetrants to keep water from going inside, because if you have brick, water goes through the mortar, hits this board and runs down to keep water from going on the inside of the house. It also has a second purpose. The second purpose is for insulation value. It actually has an R3 value, and I'll explain that more when we get inside to discuss the insulation on the inside of the home. Going around the window here, you'll see tape around the window. That keeps water from protruding in behind the window and getting into the home. Also flashing at the very top. So we add the flashing on top of the window, put it against the dowel board, and then tape it. And that keeps water from penetrating from the top of the window. And at the very top, you see that all our siding is primed. So it comes pre-primed from the manufacturer, but we go a step further and actually prime it before we even paint it. And that helps with mildew in the future, so we make sure that we don't have mildew problems 5-10 years down the road. This is the second half of the pre-drywall meeting that I want to discuss with you. There's a few things in here that are very important that David Weekley sets itself apart compared to our competitors. The first thing is the insulation on the exterior wall. We do 2x6 exterior walls. 2x6 is the thickness of the board on the outside compared to our competitors do 2x4. So the main thing that makes it the most important is the insulation is going to be thicker on the outside compared to our nearest competitor. So this insulation that is on the exterior wall here is actually going to be R19. And with the blue board that's on the outside that I discussed earlier, it's actually going to be R22 total thickness, when our nearest competitor is only going to do R13. So it's a lot thicker insulation. With us doing 2x6 exterior walls, this is a stronger wall than a 2x4. I'm able to make the headers above the window into a shape of a C. So if you see here above, you'll see that there's insulation above the window here, compared to our competitor will have two boards intersecting each other with no insulation whatsoever. Continuing with our pre-drywall presentation here, I wanted to show you our open corners where insulation is able to go further into the corner compared to our nearest competitor. Yes, they are adding a little bit more wood with 2x4s because the wall isn't as strong as a 2x6, but we found with advanced framing that we're able to use this 2x6 material and leave the cavities open to where I'm able to push insulation into the corners here, and it goes around the home. If you see here, as an example, I'm pulling the insulation away. You can see this is the open cavity that the insulation actually goes into the back section here. With the C headers that we do above the windows, putting insulation there, with the insulation that goes into the corners, and with the thickness of the insulation on 2x6 walls instead of 2x4, we get 50% more insulation than our nearest competitor. Continuing with our pre-drywall discussion, I wanted to show you the AC ducts that run throughout the home. If you notice here on this duct right here, there's some plastic that actually is covering it. What we do at the pre-drywall inspection is we actually cover all the ducts, hook a fan up to one of the AC ducts, and we pull air out to make sure we don't have a lot of leakage in that area. Also, my favorite thing is with them leaving the plastic up there, when we go to spray texture later, we actually won't be blowing texture up into the boxes. So this serves for two purposes. The other thing I want to show you as an example here is at the very top plate, at the very end here, at the very top and at the very bottom, we run foam along the top plate to form a gasket. So when you put sheetrock up against an exterior wall, if you have a bunch of knots in there, well, 100 knots added up will be a hole this big. So we actually go through and foam all the top plates and all the bottom plates to form as a gasket. So when we put the sheetrock on it, we actually seal the top and bottom plate. Continuing with our pre-drywall discussion here, we talked about the foam that runs at the top plate and at the bottom plate. I also want to give you an example that we do over our competitors. Every wire or pipe that runs through a top plate will have foam on it, and you can see an example here. So if you have many little holes with pipes in it or with wires, if you have a bunch of those, eventually the holes will be this big, and we don't want any unconditioned air running through the cavities of these walls. And that's an example of a wire here that we foamed. This is the last section of our pre-drywall. The one thing I wanted to focus on here is the thickness of the insulation on a floor. So if you're building on a crawl space and we build the home up, we will have the same thickness of insulation on the bottom of the floor. This specific example is the ceiling of a garage where there's a floor above us. This is going to be R38 thickness, which is a thicker insulation than our nearest competitor. The other thing I want to show you is this spider clips here that we use to hold the insulation up against the floor, because if the insulation falls, then it'll be a hot pocket in that area to where the insulation won't be doing its job it's supposed to and keep the floor cool.